going to go through some general things about the subject that you should know, okay? General. Plus a bit of an aspect of the core of, with regards to the course. So, plus course a bit. Okay? Then next, I'm going to be going into the specifics of IGCSE as well. Okay? IGCSE, the course. So I'm going to go into course specifics that you guys need to be accustomed to. Okay? Course specifics. Then next, we're going to finally actually go and talk about the exams. But we're not going to talk about the papers right now. We're going to be talking about setting the scene of who's going to be marking you. Because you guys need to understand the psychology of what's going to be happening. Who's marking you? Okay. Then finally, we've set up all the background information and we're going to delve into the papers. P1 first, then we're going to go P4 because P1, P4 relation, right? And then finally P2 because that's a real big one that, is unknown, nobody really knows what to do. So we're going to say that for last, we're going to go through every single question that they can ask you, right? Okay. So that's basically the intro, right? So, one second. Have you guys taken all this down? Or if you didn't want to take it down, so I'm just going to erase all this. Okay. Okay, so some general things about the subject, right? So the first thing is, number one. First thing is, history is, like Raj said, it's an opinionated subject. If you go and become a professor of history, you understand what history really is. What it really comes down to is it's an analytical subject. There is opinions, nobody really knows what's right or wrong. Now, if you want to explain why, that's a bit more complicated. Because well, history happened in the past, right? We weren't actually there to witness. We weren't actually there to get a neutral copy, right? So we just, whoever was there, we just got that information. So history is going to be opinionated, right? But the reason why, over here, before I erased it, I written that this with respect to the course is because in general, history, yes, it is opinionated. It is, you hear people say this, we have to evaluate why they're saying this, is it credible? But in IGCSE history, you have to know, there is a right answer. There is a right answer in IGCSE. So this is a key fact. Now where specifically this applies to, that we're going to be covering when we go through the papers, right? But opinionated, right? You guys need to understand that. Secondly, now this is a general about the subject and this is also for the course, right? Read. Now what I mean by read is, the way history is, the more knowledge you consume, the better access or wealth of resources you have in your brain. So when it comes down to crunch time in the exam, whatever question they give, you can just go through different parts of all the knowledge you've accumulated and you can use that to answer the question. But you don't get all this knowledge accumulation by just sitting and reading one textbook. No, you need 2 textbooks, you need 3 textbooks, you need 4 textbooks. You guys have 2 years in IGCSE. Or if you're in other situation, you have about 10 months if I'm not wrong. Something like that. So, but are you in grade 10 or grade 9? 10. So you guys are in the same situation as you guys have quite a fair bit of time. So when you got the free time, you read history. You go through it, you read different textbooks, you find whatever you can. You go watch, if you guys have Netflix, there's the greatest events of World War II in color. It's a good documentary, but it is a bit biased towards the Allies. But anyway, so read, right? And thirdly, if you don't write answers, you're going to fail. There's no doubt about it. Now, the horror stories of history are, if you know the great boundaries, in order to get an A star for paper 4, which is the real kicker, you sometimes can get 20 or 40. You get 50% of one entire paper. You're losing 20 marks and somehow that's enough for A star. That tells you about the marking. So what does that mean? You got to write answers, right? So write. Okay? One second. So now another subject, this is a general thing with respect to facts, but with respect to IGCSE again, if you are unsure about a fact, do not write it. Do not write it. Now, okay, unsure about facts. The reason why it's pretty easy to get a C in history, there's no doubt about it. You mess up, you don't read enough, you didn't practice enough, you're gonna get a C. No doubt. You pop up, you're expecting an A. What?
Respect right.
Well, question. Right answers. Hopefully you're understanding a bad handwriting. So unsure about facts. Now, why is this? Right? The problem is, I'm going to go into the psychology of the teacher in a bit. But the thing is, when you write a wrong fact, immediately you paint it in a bad vision. Immediately the examiner's like, why? Like you're just lying on the paper. You're trying to get past me. Why? Why? I mean, it's just not a good thing. So if you're unsure, don't write it. It's fine. Because the thing is, if you have 10 points to write, right? But then you simply write 8. The examiner doesn't know that you had to write those 2 more points, right? But if instead you had written 10 points, but 2 of those points were wrong, now the examiner's like, this kid's written 2 wrong points, what's the point? Right? He's giving me inaccurate facts. So it's just better to not write the thing. Right?
So if it's not confirmed, you don't write it. If it's not officially confirmed, don't write it.
Yeah, but as we go into late, no. I'm talking about in the textbooks, you gotta follow those facts.
No, I mean, if the fact is not confirmed officially, then don't write it.
What do you mean by officially?
Like officially, like let me give an example. Do you know the Shinano warship from Japan? It is a confirmed fact. Whereas if you look at escapes, that is not a fact. So that kind of thing.
Oh yeah. But when we talk about facts, you guys gotta understand. When I mean facts, in history, it's almost synonymous with statistics. What are just cold hard numbers? Facts can, it will go into evidence later for paper 4, but facts can mean quotations or sayings by people or speeches. We can talk about it, but facts, for the purposes of your basic understanding, facts is equal to statistics. And when I say if you're unsure, I mean that you can't remember a textbook fact. So you've read a textbook and you understand that, for example, what's an example? So let's say 6 million Jews were killed in World War II, right? But you're like, oh my god, is it 60 or 60 million? Well, I mean, if you're at 60 million, then now what? That's basically the sum of, that's like half of the people who were killed in the entire World War II, if I'm not wrong. Right? I'm not sure, yeah, so I'm not sure. So don't write it, it's fine. It might hinder you, but it hinders you less than if you had written that wrong thing. You guys get what I mean, yeah? Because so these are basically some general overviews. This fact thing is a killer. But if you really prepare for the exams, this is not a problem for you. It doesn't concern you at all. Now the entire IGCSE history system, levels, okay, it's based around this concept of levels. Now, so basically, this level thing is important in many different ways. So here's the deal. What basically a level means is the development of the answer. Level, approximately development, right? How well have you explained your point? Now, how to explain your point, we'll be going into that as well. But the entire level system. And now if you notice, your paper 1, what? You got 4, 6, 10. And if you go into the mark scheme, I don't know how to set up the projector, so I can't show you guys, but you go home, you go open a mark scheme, you'll see level, for a 4 mark answer, you've only got level 1. For a 6 mark answer, if I'm not wrong, you go level 4. For a 10 mark answer, you go level 5. For a 40 mark answer, you go level 5. For paper 2 as well, 12 mark answer, you can go up to level 6, there's level 7, there's all sorts of levels, and all those levels correspond to is a higher number of marks, a higher level of development. If you go and look into the mark schemes, you know, for example, 6 mark, they give examples of paragraphs and points you should have written, right? But like, it's just an example. You see the number of lines is greater, right? More development, they've explained the point more, whereas in the 4 marker, for level 1 answer, it just means state. So levels is absolutely crucial. We talk about everything in terms of levels. This is the entire IGCSE history in a nutshell. Levels. Development. That's all they get. Right? Okay, so what's next? So I think it's just good for you guys to understand the theory of history. What's actually happening in history. So when you have history, right, as IGCSE, 047, 0. Right? You've got option A. And then you've got option B. So this is just crucial. I mean, it's not really crucial information, but I think it's good for you guys to understand that when you know on the board day, when you're going to go and write the paper itself, when you open that page, what are you going to see? So here's the deal. Option A is basically just, this is for code, right? Code. The code topics. For option A, it's basically 19th century from now. We're talking about the revolutionary era of the French Revolution, Italian Revolution. I'm not sure about French, but Italian Revolution, Russian Revolution. We're talking about when America had slaves. There was northern states, there's southern states, that sort of stuff, right? And then option B is what we do, right? Option B is 20th century. It's a real modern stuff. It's so modern that I'm pretty sure most of your grandparents were alive when this stuff happened. You know, your parents, they were alive when the USSR collapsed, right? I mean, when the last Shah of Iran was alive, your parents were also alive. It's that reason. Now, the reason why nobody does option A is because, to my knowledge, there's no direct textbook for option A. It's very difficult to find resources for option A. I mean, they might be indirect in the form of, like, a lot of universities go into the revolutionary area, the pre-Renaissance area. But for IGCSE history specifically, it's very hard to find textbooks. But for option B, on the other hand, we've got loads of great textbooks. Perhaps not all of them very great, but we've got a lot of textbooks here. This is what we do, right? And this core is for paper 1 and paper 2, right? But for paper 4, we've got, how many options? We've got option A to, I think, G. So we've got, just quickly list them out. We've got first World War. We've got Germany, which is what we do, right? And I'll explain the importance of Germany as well. We've got Germany, then we've got USA, we've got Russia, from Russian Revolution onwards.
Hungarian Revolution.
Yeah, we've got the reds and the whites up till the Stalin area. Then you've got, what else? You've got Israelis and Palestinians. Then you've got China. No, that's not part of it. You've got China, and that's all I can remember as a random. But I think it's just good that you guys understand this. Because when you open the paper on test day, you're going to see something that reflects this. You know how many pages to turn. You know where to look. You know which question number is going to be starting for option B, which is what you guys are doing. These are all tiny details, but I'll get to that. Okay? Here's the I think it's a bit more space. So what's the next thing? Okay, so now this is the biggest myth. I want everybody recording to understand this. Okay? And everybody listening here. Nobody cares how much you write. Nobody cares. It's irrelevant, absolutely. I say after exams, dude, how many pages you read? Out of 6 pages, out of 8. Nobody cares. It's just, nobody cares how much you read. It's the biggest myth that goes on a day-to-day basis when you're doing exams and writing answers. About how much you read. Now here's the deal. So you guys will be like, yeah, but a lot of the longer answers, those have, they get good marks, but they've written a lot, right? That's because they didn't know. What's the reasoning behind it? The thing is that in the search to get a higher level, more developed answer, you end up writing a lot. You get the difference? You're not writing because, if you write one sentence where you could have expressed in just a really cute one word, but you spent 10 words writing, the examiner at one point is just going to get pissed with you. But why is this guy wasting my time? I've got so many other papers to get. This guy is trying to stretch his answer. Nobody cares. If you can fit in something concisely, fit it in concisely. That's the golden rule. I'll show you. When I share the resources with you after this, you'll see that some of the best answers ever. They're so small. People are like paper 4. I need to write 8 pages. I need to write 6 pages. Nobody cares. Some of the best 33 out of 40, which is super, super high. You see people getting 3 pages now. 3 pages. It's all done. It's because it's quality over quantity. It really is. This is like you hear people saying that all the time, but what's the reasoning? Because if you have quality in a very developed answer, concisely fitted, that might even get you more marks than if you just written the same in a very broader way, but still developed it. Because when you express something concisely, right, it's easier to read, it gives an overall better feel to the answer, right? Do you guys agree with that? So this is extremely important. I really need, if you finish the exam and you see somebody taking extra pages, then they might just not know what they're doing. And it usually, trust me, I've done it so many times, it's so easy to ramble on with your answer. it's been like, oh, I'll add another fact, I have no structure in my answer, so let me write one more line. Oh, I'm feeling that I need to add another paragraph, let me add another paragraph. You're going to end up with a C. And remember, when I'm talking about any of this, this is for the final board examination. And I myself learned from my brother, Neel Agrawal. If I'm not wrong, he got the highest ever percentile for a history student in the school, 96. Okay? And then he himself learned from Priyankar. Priyankar, that guy came first in history BN worldwide or something. So I'm learning from these guys. I myself am not some genius. These people, this is what they did. The answers that I've uploaded are from Rishi and marked by Priyankar. Right? So this is the golden rule that my brother taught me about. And I really need to get it. Nobody cares. It's irrelevant how much you write. It's just that in the hope of getting more developed answers, people write more. You end up writing more. You don't try to write more. Okay? So what's next? So another thing is, when you look at a history mark scheme, right, what's the general consensus here? It's useless. Right? That's a general thing. Mark schemes, in actuality, they're brilliant. The way IGCSE done it, they're student friendly, they're easy to use, and they give you concise but really good ways to understand what is needed of you. Mark schemes equal to grade. Simple. You have a doubt, look at the mark scheme. And this is, we're talking about history here, but any subject, you have a doubt, you look at the mark scheme. And 999 times out of 1,000, the mark scheme will be right. Very, 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 and I don't think in history I've never come across a wrong answer, right? But for other subjects, maybe one, in other things for ad maths, only one out of everything I did, or one out of all passes, one question, that was the only time I saw a wrong answer. So these things, they tell you levels, they tell you example answers, they tell you points, they tell you, and in paper two mark schemes, people think that they are mark schemes are everything in paper 2. We're going to get to that. Okay, and now another thing. So this is actually in relation to this, right? So, we're going to add up here. Never, ever, ever describe. Now, this is actually a pretty hard thing to do, and connects to that rambling I was talking about before. It's very easy to just describe a cartoon. It's very, very easy to just go into an answer and just describe what happened, describe the events. But there's a reason why, if you notice, have you seen that in paper 1, the describe questions are only 4 marks? They're only for 4 marks, that's the only time you have to describe. And why is that? Because it's a level 1 answer. You got developing meaning for that. If you describe, you're going to get a C. Simple. So don't only describe. Now, what else do you do apart from description? Okay, I'll explain that for specifically each paper. But do not only describe. It's a big mistake. It's a horrible mistake. Never do it. There are some exceptions, but that's very tricky to find, and I'll go over that in paper 2. So the first assumption that we're going to make, and okay, now to everybody watching and to everybody here, okay? So the first assumption, before we get started on assumptions, I'm going to make another assumption that we're trying to get the highest mark possible, imposing the most rigorous sort of situation on ourselves. We're trying to be as hard on ourselves, make it as more difficult, so when testing adapts, it's much easier, and all of a sudden, it's history just seeing like a breeze in the exam. So we're trying to make it as hard we're trying to practice under the most difficult conditions, that when crunch time comes, we know what to do. So the first assumption with regard to the examiner, and we talk about examiner, well, they're going to be the one marking your paper. This isn't MCQ, this isn't some robotic person marking it, it's an examiner, it's a human, right? So we've got to understand what's going to be happening in the worst case scenario, worst case. But some of this applies. For example, the first point, tired, okay? They're tired, right? 2 to 300 papers to mark in the time span of a week, okay? 1 week. And they're going on 5 hours of sleep. Right? 5 hours of sleep. So that's the first assumption I'm going to make. And the second assumption that I'm going to make is these people, they're very, very strict markers. They're the worst I've ever seen. These people stick by the mark scheme. If there's a 50-50 on whether to give you the mark or not, they will never give you the mark. So, strict markers. That's another assumption I'm going to make, right? So then another thing that you guys have realized is, when you do your UTI essay, right? You don't agree with the mark. Good job. Let me go ask Ramesh sir. Let me go ask Yamini ma'am. What's happening, right? Let's go. Let me try and get one more mark. I'm 1 mark away from this. Let's go. That's not gonna work here. No bargaining for marks. I mean, if you've written a bad answer, you can't all of a sudden go to, first of all, the papers, you don't know where they're going. Second, you can't just get on a Zoom call or a Skype call with the examiner or sit on a one-on-one and say, oh, I actually meant this. I didn't mean this. Oh, I forgot a fact here. You can just mark it like I put that. No. It's not good enough. You're not going to get that chance. Whatever's in the paper is the reflection of you to the examiner. Your answer is all they have. That's all they have. They don't know who you are, they don't know where you've come from, they don't know what mood you were in the exam, they don't know what you ate in the what you ate for breakfast, maybe that's the reason why you're writing an answer. No, it's only the answer. That's it. That's all they know about you. Okay? Okay, so now the question is, we've got all these tough problems on us. How do we combat these? How do we get it? How do we, even despite all these, still succeed? Right? So, tips. Attention to detail. Right. So, when you have a nice big answer, what you really should be doing is focusing on any tiny thing. Any tiny thing that you think that could impact your answer, you go after it. You're ruthless. On whatever answer you write, you think that this could be a certain point, right? I mean, you're gonna go and look into it, right? But I mean, I cannot stress this enough. This is all about balance here. I'm not telling you that, for example, if you deserve a mark, now you just remove the mark because that's more difficult. No, that's just stupidity. There's a difference. So this has to be with respect to balance, because if you're not balancing, what I mean by attention to detail is you be more. I mean, when there's a 50-50 chance of something going wrong, you just assume that, like what we were saying, they're not going to give you the mark or something, so you go and change that detail, right? So with respect to balance. So another thing is, and this is going to start just dumb, stupid, good handwriting. Now, why is it that we need to write in a good handwriting? Well, this again connects with details, right? Like, let's get inside the examiner and put yourself where this examiner is coming from, right? They've got 200 to 300 papers to mark. They've got so much work. They can't spend that much time on your answer, right? They're tired. They need more sleep. They're probably running on a lot of coffee or something like that to keep them going. So if they see a nice, neat answer, right? So if they see a nice, neat answer, right? Isn't that gonna automatically, somewhere in their subconscious, help you out, right? It's gonna be beneficial towards you. Good handwriting, and plus, they don't have to spend that extra time looking and really trying to understand. And be aware that they might not even do that. I mean, because they've got so many papers to mark, and you can imagine a paper one takes so long to mark if they're doing it properly, right? So I mean, if they see bad handwriting on you, or even something that's slightly illegible, they're not going to care. They're going to be like, oh, I don't understand. I want to do this one. I mean, so let's assume that, right? So you need good handwriting. And how do you improve your handwriting? You write a paper, you give it to your mom, you give it to your dad, you give it to a friend. Can you understand this properly? Is it taking you effort to read this? If it is, then I'm not even kidding. Practice how to read it. Practice good handwriting if it's that bad. Practice, because it's going to make a difference, right? So what else is there? Okay, so now this is a real big one. Okay, paragraph. Paragraphing, structure, language. So now, like, you got to treat this honestly as a bit of an English essay here, because well, it is an English essay in literal terms, right? What matters with respect to details again is, okay, did you make a break at the correct point? Does that, when you have two paragraphs with different ideas, are you merging them? That's a horrible idea to do. Paragraphs are meant to be, are by definition, a collection of a set of sentences regarding a single idea, right? So you got to separate them, right? Structure. I mean, if your answer's got, like, your introduction is sort of merging it with your first paragraph. Your first point is linking to the second. Your second point, but it's not really going. I mean, it's very bad linking. Or if you don't have the examiner can't look at your paper and read, this is an introduction, this is its first point, second point, third point, this is a conclusion. If they can't do that, you don't have a good structure. So that's what's important, right? And then language. Now, this is now you gotta for language. I mean, you gotta understand that when you're speaking, like I'm speaking, I'm not the best at communication, right? I'm not that good, right? But if I use the right words, if you use the right words, it makes your thing more concise. It just makes it better read, and again, it's impacting the psychology, right? Now it's easier to read. It looks better. It's got good linking, right? It's got good paragraphing. It's got good breaks. And now on top of all this, in the lines themselves, it communicates what you have to do effectively. And be aware, the wrong language can actually tell the examiner the opposite. It can change the meaning of your sentence, right? It can make it worse. It can make it just basically unreadable at some point. You can have good all this, but you don't have good language pointers, right? So all this is difficult to master, and this is going to take a lot of practice. Your English literature language, this is going to help you out here. This is the real life application of this. Okay, it's going to help you out here. It's difficult to master, but if you master, you will see the difference in your answer. You'll see like this is unreadable before, but now it was difficult to read. But now compared to this, it's so bad. Like this is such a good answer. I can just read it in 5 seconds and I understand the entire essay. That's what it really is. And if you want to really understand where this makes the difference is, when you have good this, it makes somebody who's completely uneducated on a topic so much easier to understand what you're saying. People really understand what you're saying, and this is really where the finer details are. But I have to give you a description. If you don't know what you're talking about in your answer, this is all useless. It's pointless. If you don't know what you're talking about, there's no point of doing this. How is good handwriting going to help you if you think that Hitler was the Chancellor of Austria? Right? It's not going to help you. So this only matters if you know what you're doing. That's it. These are the details, and they call details for a reason because they're not the bulk of it. 95% is about answers, with your content of the answers. Only this 5% to really get you across is this details. But obviously we're looking to get maximum out of absolutely everything. We're looking to absolutely push the limits. We want to get 98% up. We want to get 97% up. So we also talk about these details, right? But first we have to master this 95%, and I'm glad that finally we're done with this section. Now let's go on to the papers. Let's talk about what you actually need to master this 95%. We're done with the 5%, we're done with the preambling. We're going to go on to the papers now. So paper 1, when you open, okay, so first of all you guys, it's good to know that first of all, the way it works actually for all the papers is you're going to get a question booklet, right? And then you're going to get an answer booklet. So what actually goes to the examiner, they don't staple them together like you do in school. You get an answer booklet and you get a question booklet. And so what actually happens, they just send the answer booklet and they actually scan it. That's why you have, if you notice, if you guys haven't actually been in a board exam yet, but on the board exam, bottom of the pages, there is actually barcode because they scan your thing, right? So on the first page, I'm not going to draw, so I can't really see it. What you're actually going to see on the question booklet is, you're going to see, that's online, you can see that. So the first 4 questions of paper 1, first 4 questions, when you open the core, right, first 4, section A, option A. This is what you're going to see in past papers and in the board, right? And also the subtlety that I thought that I would just let you guys appreciate is the fact that if you notice that IGCSE is so nice to you guys in their question paper formatting, is that if you see papers, you never have to. This applies to mainly like English and stuff, but you never have to turn your head across to see the previous thing. And they go to such extent as leaving a blank page so that you have the ease of not turning back. Everything's right in front of you that you need. That's something that you guys will appreciate. So you guys might see a couple blank pages, and you see on past papers or something, this page was left blank. So you're going to see 4 questions of option A. Nobody cares. So I mean, we're doing option B here. The next 4 questions, that's where the money's at, right? Option B. This is where you guys are gonna get the marks, right? So you guys are gonna see this, right? And then after your 4 questions of your option B, you might see a page left blank intentionally, or it might be the next page, but you're gonna see your depth size, right? And over here you have to pick one. So you're gonna open the test booklet. You might or might not see this. Usually, I think you do see this, but it depends on the time zone. It depends on the paper, right? We do time zone 3 if you didn't know. So whatever papers, the actual papers we had, and you'll be registered for when you get your sheet is paper 1-3, paper 2-3, paper 4-3. 1-3, 2-3, 4-3. So whenever you look at date boundaries, this is what you have to look at because they specify. So 1-3, 2-3, 4-3, and we're in administrative zone 5. Admin zone 5. This is just general information, not really for history, but what you guys should know. I mean, if I remember correctly, at least. So this is what you see when you open the paper. On the question booklet, I have actually got the option to write one. So I'm not particularly sure, but I do have a scanned copy of English literature answer. They use the same booklet. So what I remember is on the front page is the details. First page details. Details. So for every IGCSE thing, if I'm not wrong, you have your full name, which is registered by your parent, whatever they want to put your name as for the thing. You're gonna have your candidate number, and you're gonna have your center number. Candidate number that depends. Center number HG080. So that's what you're gonna have to put in there. Okay. This is what I mean by details. That's what you have to put in there. Then on the details, then you're gonna open the booklet. And you're gonna have, I don't know how many pages, but X amount of pages. That's what you're gonna see. So that's when you open the paper. So now you guys know on test day, in 2 years or how many ever months you guys have left, when you open it, what you're gonna see when you come on that test day. So you guys are not oblivious. But it is also important to mention is that the way that that all the IGCSE papers are going to be printed is that they don't print it like how you print 1 page, 2 page. They print it on an A3 and then staple it in the middle. So you don't, there's no staple at the top. There's 2 staples on the side, like you know how a notebook is, right? So, can borrow a notebook? So the paper will it actually comes, like, they'll print it like this, then they'll print the second. So you actually get your last page and your first page printed first. Then they'll print your second last and your second page there. And then they'll all staple it and close it. So it's much easier to go through. It's a much better paper. It's not going to be flimsy or anything. It's going to be really good quality stuff that you guys are going to be working with for your question paper. Okay? So that's what, now you guys know what to expect. Okay, what's next? So finally, question 4. 4 marker. Now this question, level 1 answer. Let's take a note of that. Level 1 answer. Now you guys do not waste any time on this. If you know your facts, you memorize your facts properly, 2 minutes. State four facts, 4 points, and go. Done. Two minutes, level 1 answer, you state, you're done. Right? But one thing that you guys do have to know with respect to question 4 is that sometimes they can be different. Like you guys have studied L1, everybody has studied League of Nations, right? In League of Nations, do you guys know the answer to the question? I saw this is a real past paper question. What did Haile Selassie do upon the invasion of Abyssinia? Do you guys know the answer?
I think I know half of it. So So here's practically the leader of MSC. So once at least Muslims started invading, every force went to the League of Nations to solve this. But League of Nations couldn't do much. They just put some economic sanctions on this
So now you're going to L1. You're wasting your time here. Okay, you know the real answer? He notified that he appealed to the League of Nations. He told all children, he told the armed force to mobilize. He told all women and children to leave the capital, if I'm not wrong. Right? Don't beg me on the specifics, but that's what I remember. And he also told all men to join the armed forces, something like that. So this is where you could lose your 4 marks. These 4 marks are crucial because your 10 mark to 6 mark, that's a bit more harder to get. So these 4 markers, use the mark scheme. And what I suggest highly is actually not just for example, what's one of the in the pre-settlements, there's all like the usual is TOB. That's a real main PC that we're going to talk about, right? But a lot of, for example, 4 markers for TOB section might ask you, state the terms of what's another one? The Treaty of Trianon, right? Or Sashima. So actually the mark scheme, they're actually really, because even though they just say examples and then they quote, right? They actually have really good information. So you can just mark that. Make a note of that every time you come across one, right? So use the mark scheme for paper 4, right? But for now, as we see for 6 markers and for 10 markers, mark scheme isn't as good, but it's still very good. So question 6, not question 6 marker, right? Now this is going to be a bit of a higher level. If I'm not wrong, it's going to be level 4. So what a level 4 actually is, right? So a level 4 is basically, in the mark scheme, I'll tell you, level 3 for 2 points. So now a level 3 answer is, okay, so I think it's a good idea for me to explain what does explain actually mean. When they see development, when I sequence using the word development level, what does that actually mean? What is the structure of the explanation of a document? Explain structure. I had a lot of hard, finally I've sort of figured it out, but back when I was doing history, I had no idea what I was doing. So this is the formula. First, what's your point? What's your main claim? At the start of the sentence, at the start of your paragraph, point / main claim. That's the first thing you gotta do. What's the second thing? One thing. Let me just look at the thing before I forget. No, it's evidence. Why? How can you back up this main claim? Why should the examiner believe what you're saying is true? Now this evidence actually, this can manifest itself in different ways. For paper 1, this can perhaps be a description of what happened. Now remember I said don't describe, this could be an exception. You have to be very, very careful here. Okay? When to use a statistic, when to just use a description. Okay? Stats. Description. So this is what I mean by evidence. This evidence is backing up your main claim, right? And then finally, you really have to say link, right? About what do you mean by link? What does this mean? You got to think of it like this. Why should the examiner care about this point with reference to the question? This is what the meaning of link is. Why should the examiner, how is this relevant to the question? Why should the examiner care? This is what link means. This is what link means, right? So this is the golden thing that I've learned, right? This is what I would have done. Now this is the formula that you can apply anytime, anywhere for paper 1. And as you see for paper 4, we're also going to go through that. For paper 1, 6 marker, 10 marker, this is what you do. And for paper 4 marker, if you're wondering, then maybe you add 1 line of introduction really quickly, and then you take your 4 points down. Okay? Understand what I understand, but we should finish. So for this 6 marker, don't waste too much time. 8 to 10 minutes. 10 markers. Now this is the big thing, right? And okay, for 3 markers, important I specify. You have to write 3 main points. Now in the mark scheme, I'll tell you 2, but we want to make sure we're getting the 6 marks, right? So we have to write 3. We're going to write 3. You guys can fit it in a few. I mean, this is what I do. I always wrote 3, write 3. It's a safe bet. Think of 3. If you really can't think of 3, then remember what I said about facts. Don't make up some random stuff and then end up getting cut marks because you wanted to be a hero. No. You can only think of 2. If you really spend time and you can only think of 2, okay, fine, write 2. So 10 marker. What's the level for this? Yes, so 10 markers is level 5. This is the highest level you'll see in paper 4 or paper 1. So now this, I would say you can spend some more time on it, right? So I would say 15 minutes to 20. And over here, it's important. This is always, so this question is always going to be how/why. This is always going to be describe/state. These are the command terms that they're the only command terms they can use to my knowledge. Or I know. Okay? And this one, you guys know this. You guys have seen to what extent or how far do you agree. Now this phrasing is very particular because in the mark scheme reflects why they said it this way. Okay? So for 10 marker, 3v3 points. 3 for, 3 against. This is how much you have read all the time. 3 for, 3 against. Paragraphs in this format. This is what I feel, right? 3v3 points. Now you gotta understand. If you just have 3v3 points and you do all this, you know how much you're gonna get. The difference between a level 5 and a level 5 is only 10 marks. And if you want to get a full 10, you get 1 bonus mark only if you go from an answer to 10 only if you do one thing. And that's you evaluate. You give an end evaluation. That's why I was talking about they give this. To what extent? Because at the end of the day, whatever question they give, you have to say, is this side right? Is this side wrong? So evaluation. Bonus for evaluation. This is the +1 mark that everybody wants. The evaluation. When I always remember before I didn't look at a mark scheme until end of grade 10 when I was about to write the board. Then I saw, wait, what, 1 mark for evaluation? This is what you have to do. Right? The IGCSE is full of these 1 bonus marks. Right? So this is basically paper 1. This is in-depth what you need to do. But now you say, Neel, where do I learn the content from? There's only 1 book for the job. Only 1, and you're going to use this book. This book is your Bible. Okay? Oxford 20th century option B. Spend the money on it, get it. This book is going to carry you through for everything. For core chapters, there is no greater book than this. And unfortunately, I couldn't find an online version online. But if you want the content, you buy this book. 20th century. It's got an orange color. Okay, orange color. I think you can find it popular, and the front page, if I'm not wrong, has got sort of a revolutionary. It's got a microphone. That's all I remember for the new edition. Try and get the new edition. It's got a bunch of changes for the syllabus. So this is a textbook. This is everything you have to know about paper 1. Do you guys have any questions? Now, you should go for the textbook actually. This is the reading. Read. Now, I know this is an IGCSE paper, but if you want to get above 30 in this paper, 30 plus is gold. 30 plus this is now the stuff of dreams. Okay? This is one of the highest levels you can get. This is where you want to get 30 plus out of 40. Okay? Now, you are not going to my knowledge, I don't know anybody who's gotten these sort of marks in a paper 4 by reading your average, your Oxford 20th century is not going to cut it for this. We're going to go to a different textbook. Jeff Layton, A levels. I've already put this on the resource folder that I'm going to send out today. From second right to third right. Okay, this is a textbook where I found I was like I've struck gold. I didn't get any better in this textbook because this textbook had everything. It covered. If you want to study from your teacher from pre-Germany, from the second and after World War, remember you guys learned about what happened. You guys learned about peace settlements. We learned know about the immediate changes that happened after World War II, what that happened to the collapse in Germany and so on. This Jeff Layton A-level book, I mean, this covers everything from this all the way to the end of World War II. It's got everything, it's got so many facts, so many statistics, and I've even made a collection of that, so I'll send that to you guys as well. Yeah, sure. So this book, this is the goal. You don't have to buy this, you can buy it if you want, I don't know where you can buy it, but this is a great book, in my experience. Jeff Layton A-level. So read. Now, as for how do you structure your thing, again, first of all, this is a level 5 max. Okay, level 5. Level 5 answer, but over here, level 5. Now, this means a different thing. Level 5 is 33 marks to 40. It's a lot of marks. And now, this is the biggest misconception about how much you have to write. Nobody cares about how much you write. Now, over here, we need to specify what we mean in order to get to these level 5s. Okay? First of all, we need 3 to 4, yes, 3 to 4 on the evaluation side. Again, just like how for paper 1 we had how far do you agree or to what extent, again it's 3 to 4, 3 to 4. It's the same wording of the question except it's 40 marks now. And it's covering bigger topics. 3 to 4 and 3 to 4 for points. Okay, on each side of the body. Introduction, conclusion, this is pretty obvious, I don't have to go through that for you guys. Introduction, 3 to 4, another 3 to 4, conclusion, okay. We got it. Okay? So 3 to 4, 3 to 4, but how many evidences do we need here? What's the total amount? We need 12 to 15. Now, like I said, evidences, they mainly manifest themselves in terms of statistics. Okay, the Nazi party had these many members in 1921. After Hitler went on trial for, that's pretty inaccurate. I mean, before Hitler went on trial, he had Nazi party.
Oh wait, sorry.
Before the Munich Putsch and Hitler went on trial, Nazi party also came members. Afterwards, they had this hardest one. Okay, but remember that linking thing which I said. You have to tell the exam, you have to lay it out for them that why should they care about this evidence? How does this evidence prove what you have to say? How does it relate? How does it relate to your main point? How does this evidence relate to the overall question? Okay, this is really important. And it seems easy for me to say this. This is going to take you 2 years to master. A year, 6 months, however fast you get. This is going to be a while. Okay, it's not going to be easy. So what's next for paper 4? Another thing that you guys have to know for paper 4 at least is that it's about selection of facts. Selection. If you just think that you're going to mug up all the facts from Jeff Layton, go into the question, go into the exam, and just dump it, you're going to get a B, you're going to get an A. You're not going to get the A star. Because what's crucial for IGCSE history, and this is not just paper 4, it's paper 1 as well, selection. Like I said, you need to be able to link that, right? So you have to select your word choice. You have to select what evidences are you going to use, what statistics are you going to use, what quotations are you going to use, right? You have to select carefully because this is a big part about getting here. This is the end goal. This is the end goal. Okay? Level 4, level 5, that's where you want to be. And selecting what you have to say, that's where it's at, right? Okay, so I think for paper 4, so most people lose. I mean, this is the paper where you see the marks not really coming on. And I talked about the mark schemes, right? People get 10 out of 40, you get 3 out of 40, you can get, if you're getting 25, shit, you're doing a great job, right? 25 out of 40. But so just think about the marking here, right? You're not meeting, these are really strict criteria, they mark it like it's no joke. So if you want to get A star history, it's 100 out of 150. You can lose 50 marks and get A star. Why is that? Because everybody's losing marks here. You're on paper 2, so everybody is the marks goes. But now, I think we can finally get into paper 2, which is, this is the real secret. It took me 2 years to unlock of paper 2. It took me a long time to understand what's happening. Others' best answers were 4 pages, 4 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, done. So it's about, because he selected his language, he selected the facts, he knew what he was going to talk about, he planned everything. And as for, I just quickly mentioned this for paper 4, you should spend 5 minutes planning. 5 minutes. It's compulsory. You don't take longer, but you need to plan. If you don't know the structure, if you don't plan, then you're not going to get that structure that we talked about makes such a big impact on your answer, right? And you should try and write the question in 40 minutes. Okay, this is really tough because you actually have an hour, right? But try and get done in 45 minutes. Challenge yourself to write this fast. Write neat, try and get everything 40 minutes. Okay, that's what paper 4. But now let's get into paper 2. Now this is a paper which is actually a bit of a mystery, right? And this is where that bit at the start when you talk about the general bit of the subject doesn't apply for IGCSE. It's a source-based paper, right? Source-based. So do you think that a source-based paper, right? Should that source-based paper should be up to interpretation, or should it actually be a right answer or wrong answer? What do you guys think? Well, this is exactly where I lost my marks. There is a right answer. There is a right answer over here. And guess what? If you don't get this right answer, you are immediately dropping 5 levels down to level 2 or level 1. Immediately. You check the marksings, you go home. If you don't state the right answer, if you don't know there is a right answer to the question, I'm sorry, you're not going to score well here. There is a right answer. And as we go through the question for paper 2, because they're very specific question, you'll understand this right answer is very, very counterintuitive sometimes. It's difficult to find at times. It's very, very obvious at sometimes. But sometimes you miss that obviousness because you're thinking too deep into the answer. So there is a right answer for paper 2. That's the secret that nobody wants to tell you. The secret that when you forget to look at the marks and you think the marks are useless, it's going to impact you. Okay? So here's the deal. So for paper 1 and paper 4, at least you guys know, you guys written it, right? It's difficult to finish it in time. For me personally, I always had time problems. Paper 2, you master it, you see 2 hours, you're going to finish in half an hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour. Half an hour is a bit of a stretch, but 1 hour, you can finish this. That if you know what you're doing in paper 2, your answer, you just know it, you just know what to do, you know what questions to expect. And for 2020, for Adit's grade, for you guys' grade, the topic is going to be TOV, right?
Yeah.
So, I researched man, so TOV. 2022, for Parth, is going to be cold water, so water chance. Water chance. Right? You know the last chapter number, I forgot the name, the number, but basically Berlin Wall falling, and then Hungarian Czechoslovakian revolutions.
Checkpoint Charlie incident.
Checkpoint Charlie as well, yeah. But we already talked about Checkpoint Charlie. Okay, so there is a right answer. This is for you guys, which one you guys are doing. So what's next? What have to talk about? So this is actually, history is a skill-based analytical subject. This is where all of that is applied. Skilled analysis is needed. This is where analysis really takes place. The other places you can mug up answers, you can mug up really well written essays and then come to the exam. Over here, sorry, it's not over. So you can look on the spot. You have to understand that this paper, you have to use your skill. This is where you develop the skill. And one thing, so for example, you guys have to do this. But if, for example, you guys do a paper 2 on Iran, well, that doesn't really matter. Do it on Iran, it's fine. Do it on the Gulf chapter, it's fine. Because this is so skill based, it doesn't matter what chapter you're doing. And by the way, QV and borders, there are so many possibilities, like specific. And they really like, sometimes they do it, I never thought IGCSE repeated, but for paper 2, they repeat a lot of cartoons. So go through the past papers, very important there. So they repeat a lot of cartoons. So look out for that. Okay. So unlike for the other 2, I could lay out paragraphing wise what you have to do, what's the time frame and stuff. Over here, unfortunately, there's no formula here. There really isn't. No formula, which is quite unfortunate. So what does this actually mean? What does this imply for you guys? It means that the only way to actually crack this paper is by doing loads and loads of practice. If you go through and look for the mark scheme which you've seen in previous papers that you've done, and you have to look and look and look and look. There's no formula. So what this means is that this implies that you have to have a lot of discretion. Right? Discretion. And discretion means that the responsibility of this answer is on what? It's for you guys, right? And not for you guys to have good judgment, you have to have the practice to paper 2. And that practice also the experience of getting it wrong and knowing why you're right. Right? So that's one thing. Okay? So I think maybe we can finally go into the actual questions, right? So, okay, so now here you guys are, okay, so one thing I'm not going to write down because it's kind of waste my time, but over here you guys learn about core chapters, Germany, it's all mugging based, right? You have to learn the facts, you have to memorize the facts. over here, they don't care about background knowledge. They really do. Background knowledge. I mean, there are questions that we'll go through that. But for background knowledge, if you base your answer on background knowledge, you're gonna end up with level 2, level 3. Never gonna go higher, unfortunately. So background knowledge, please. That's taking a real backseat here. Source over everything. Your source is your number one friend, and now we're gonna go through another thing. Okay? Provenance. Now provenance is the origin of where you're coming. For example, David Lowe on 1942 Britain in a German newspaper. Or a British newspaper. Right? Provenance is equal to gold. Now this provenance is this is so important. Like your marks are going to come from this provenance. Okay? You have to understand the provenance, you have to see what this implies for the question. Okay, provenance is just so important for paper 2. Right? And now another thing is, like we talked about, it's very easy to describe a cartoon, right? It's very easy to say, oh, here's a bird on a bunch of roofs which look really bad, so hence it must be a USSR cartoon. But that's all, first of all, that USSR cartoons you already know because they were in provenance. Secondly, nobody cares that there's a bird there. Nobody cares. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to the exam, it's irrelevant to the question, nobody cares. Okay? So do not describe the stuff here. Right? And okay, now here's the great thing about paper 2. Because if you know the right answer, if you know, for example, if you know the big message of what they're trying to tell you, if you write 2 lines, you get the highest level. 2 lines. That's what here. 2 lines. That's amazing. The second, okay, don't go to the exam, write 2 lines for a second mark, and even though you do deserve the highest mark, that in theory is possible, don't actually do it. Okay, go in, right, and then this is where if you want to add a bit of stuff, then maybe you just describe a bit in case, okay, but 2 lines, you figure out those 2 lines, and once you do more practice, you'll understand what those 2 lines are, okay, depending on the question. So I think you guys should go home and it's been quite a while, but I think after we go through this bunch of questions, and you guys know what to write for each one, you guys can go. No, I just have to finish these questions, like what questions came on. The good thing with history though, as difficult as it may be to score, you know the questions that are coming. So usually there are going to be, there are going to be 6 questions for this. The number of cartoons can range from source A all the way from source A to, if I'm not wrong, I. So you can get these many sources. Okay? So 6 questions. 6 questions. Okay? And so number 1. So these are going to be 6 markers, 7 markers, and finally you're going to get a huge 12 marker. This 12 marker is a staple. This is always going to be there. 6, 7, 12. Okay, so it can be 8. And I don't remember there are 9, but I do not think there are 9 markers. So you got, these are the 4 marks for the E question. Okay, so first question that they'll always ask you. Okay, so one second, let me just go over everything. First question. And by the way, like once you master paper 2, it's going to be so fun. Like I enjoyed it by the time I learned how to do it. I mean, so general, so this is not exactly a formula, but this is stuff that you have to implement any question you have about. So strong overall topic sentence. Do you agree or not? So, for example, if they say, does source A have the same message as source B? Then you're saying overall, source A does not have the same message. Clear. One line clear. Always. You have to include this always. Okay, so what's next? Right? So this is basically a stance, right? Equal to stance. Then what else is that? Okay, and so basically, again, we're going to be following, you have to provide 3 evidences. Now, over here, evidences means what? Evidences means that usually you can provide, if the source is based on passages like a letter or some written thing, then you quote them. But now be advised, you do not waste your time by writing the full quotation. you put the first two or three words, put the last 2 or 3 words, in between you put dot dot dot. Do not waste your time. Do not need to write the full question. No need for full quotation. So remember that at all times. See, evidence is usually okay. But be aware. For example, it's a cartoon. Right now you're like, Neel, there's nothing to do. There's nothing. So first of all, evidence can be a caption. And if you have nothing else to do, then what you do is you describe your interpretation of how that supports your argument. So you describe for a cartoon that, oh, this bird on a roof symbolizes what? How can that support my answer? So that's the evidence here. And so you're going to provide 3 evidences for whatever paragraph you have, always. Okay? Link. Okay, so first question. Now really quickly I'll run through the questions, shouldn't take too much time now. First question. How far do these sources agree / differ? Now this is where the 2 lines for 7 for the highest level really counts. Okay? Question 1. Big message. Now, what to understand what this big message means is, it's actually really counterintuitive. Big message, like you guys already know. For example, if it's about the Marshall Plan and one is from the USSR, one's from the USA, or say for example, but it'd be like one's in favor of the Marshall Plan, one's not. That's literally it. That's it. Big message done. Big message. Okay, but now remind, when I talk about 3 evidences per paragraph, I say per paragraph because you have to write a paragraph, you have to write one side on every single question, you have to write one side on, not every single question, but for these other questions, these are sort of evaluation questions, right? Because we are stating our stance of whether we agree or not, so that means that we also have to write a for and against side. So this is why 3 evidences per, okay? And again, this 3 evidence is not really, it's not absolute. Like if you want to write 2, for example, like you really don't think it's on the side, then maybe write 2. Okay, I won't say write 1, but 2 to 3. Okay, big message. That's it. That's all we really want. Okay, and like this, I told you, this is counterintuitive. Like it's like you wouldn't think looking at a 7-mark question that all you have to write is the big message is one supports Marshall Plan, one doesn't. Right? It's pretty easy, right? But look at the marks here. It's what it says. Okay, what's next? What's the second question? How useful? Now this question is actually, now I'm going to give you an example of one question I came across, and this really tells you the skill that you need to identify this sort of stuff. So this is provenance. This is where the provenance is called. Provenance. Okay, this is all you care about. All you care about is provenance. Okay, and usually the question is something like the question is something like, how useful is this cartoon to a historian studying in that whatever year it was something, right? So for example, provenance. So what I mean when I say provenance, right? So provenance. So let me give you an example. So the question I had once was, okay, so it gave some Russian letter from some bureaucrat that was part of a government agency, right? And the question says, how useful is this? So it's a Russian letter, so it must be not useful. And it must be biased also towards, you have to talk about bias. Okay, that's quickly. Bias. This is very important, okay? Which side is it biased against? Why is it biased? This is what you have to include in the thing. Okay, bias. Okay? Now the question was, so I was like, okay, Charlie, he's Russian, so he must be heavily biased or something. The actual answer, can you guess what the counterintuitive answer actually was? The answer was that since this guy is a top level official, which is given in the province, it's a very credible source. Because he's getting his information from close. Counterintuitive answer, how do you spot this practice? No other way. So then later on I learned that I could spot this this guy is actually a top level official, doesn't matter what country he's from, because he'll be a credible source for news because he's very close to the government, to the head, right? So that's actually very counterintuitive. So what's question number 3 now? Okay, how does this make that surprising? Now this is a very tricky question. So over here, what's crucial in the mark scheme, it always says is compare. You have to compare the two sources, right? And now one thing is you have to evaluate one. Evaluate. Now evaluate is what? This provenance. Is this provenance useful? What's happening with the provenance? Evaluate. You have to evaluate one. And now whenever it says one, it only means this cartoon. Okay? So this cartoon, which says how does source E make source B surprising? So source E makes source what's the letter before E?
Russian.
D. Yeah, D. We're so bad at alphabets. Okay, so it says how does source E make source D surprising? So and you have to evaluate one. You only evaluate source E. Okay, this is crucial because you can lose marks here. Okay? So now this is really quick answer to question 3. Okay, so what's next? And by the way, for this question, one little note I made is when I looked at my paper, for example, the paper I was supposed to write, sometimes it says how useful is this in giving certain information, right? So for them, you have to tailor this answer towards that information, right? So, but yeah, so sometimes, so for those type of questions, this provenance might not be the absolute chunk of the answer, right? It might not be the complete thing, okay? So then how similar? So now I'm not, okay, so I'll just write this down. Question 4. How similar are sources E and F? So now this is basically this big message thing again. So it's basically 3 marks for you guys if you know what you're doing because you've already seen that. This is a repetition of another question. But now notice the phrasing here, right? This is similar here. This is agree slash differ. So you're talking about big message again here, big message. But now all of a sudden you have to phrase it differently. This is where the language structure, everything is coming here. And now remember, I have to remind you again, we're talking about how similar, so of course we have to include how is it not similar, right? And all that overall strong topic sentence I talked about, it's all, we're assuming that you guys know all this. Assuming you're writing all that, okay? Different framing, that's it. So, okay, so now this is one of my favorite questions to answer actually when I was doing it. So question number 5, okay? Why would that person give this speech? Why would that person give this speech? Why now? Why now? And now this is a factor of 3 things in the mark scheme. Okay, now this is like, okay, for example, in my prelim to the question, that was the only good paper to ever wrote by the way. Why now? That question was for the Russian thing. It was something along the lines of it was like. What was the question? It was like, why did this person give the speech at the UN in 1949 or something? Okay. So now this is the function of 3 things: purpose, audience, who is he speaking to, and finally, with respect to the context of what's happening. So now, this is where that background knowledge comes in hand. So with that Russian guy, it was 1946. What's happening in 1946? We're starting out the Cold War. The tension between USSR and US is happening. So that's the context. Audience is who? He was speaking in the UN General Assembly, so he's trying to get the point across that it's not the USSR's fault. USA is the one instigating everything. It's their fault. Okay? That's the purpose of the audience. Right? 3 things. 3 marks if you know what you're doing. It's 3 marks. It's such a fun paper to write the second you know what you're doing. Because you don't have to write much. 2 lines get you highest level answer. So if you know all this, it's free. Okay? Alright, so we'll just ask for a couple more questions. Okay, how does this cartoon support that? So now this is this question, which one? How similar? This can also come in the form of cartoons. That's where it's a bit more tricky because that description, I think, I told you, coming along the lines of description and describing the cartoon, it's a bit of fine line and it's a bit tricky. So you have to. That's where the practice comes in. Okay, so be careful with the cartoons. Cartoons are fun, but the answers aren't always as fun as analyzing a cartoon. Okay, what's next? How does this cartoon? Okay, message of the cartoon. Message of the cartoon. So this is big message again, right? What's this cartoonist trying to do? Where is your evidence for that? How does this bird on the thing again support this? Right? Big message. Big message is a word I love. It's all over the marks. That's a head examiner loves to use the word big message. Okay? So what's next? And okay, by the way, this big message usually, it indicates why. Okay, so we've arrived at the last question. Thanks for your staying. Now this is the big money question. This is a huge question. Okay. Last question of every paper is going to be the title. So the title, for example, if it's why the pre-settlement is justified, for you guys, you already know even 6 months or 10 months before the exam what that last question, and it's probably going to be, can't say for sure, maybe framing it different, but the question is something, you already know the question now. Why the peace treaties of 90 of the meeting of the Paris Peace Conference justified? You already know the question. That's all. That you already know the 12 marker question. But now the answering is much different. So first thing for 12 marker. 12 marker. Okay. Make a table. Make a table. Now this table is for what? This table is for you to take. Okay. So let me give you an example. So A, B, C, D. Yes, no. Oh wait, one second. Yeah, yes, no. So over here, I think it's a no, so I take no. I think that for B, it does support it, right? C doesn't. That's how you do it. That's how you make the table. Okay? This answer is going to be, if for example in the 1/2 thing, one has a bit of a stretch again. So, for example, 1/2 is spending, you're probably going to spend 20 to 30 minutes on this 12 marker, right? Okay, so again, overall topic sentence, you need that. And the overall topic sentence, this time all you state is sources blah 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 disagree, sources blah 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 agree. That's all you have to say.
For the last one.
For this one, in the overall topic sentence. Topic sentence, not that 12 mark question. Okay. So now you guys know one thing you really need to know is that if you put these sources on the wrong sides, you're gone. Sorry, you're going to lose 6 marks, 10 marks. You're going to lose 6 marks, 10 marks, okay? Because you put it on the wrong side. But thankfully, a lot of the sources, thank goodness to IGCSE, they put them in the, if you see the mark scheme, they're in both. So you can use them for either. But not all sources and not all the time. So you have to be careful. And as for using the same side, for example, I want you to source A on both sides of the answer. This is a very, very extreme case. Okay? Do not suggest it too much. In extreme cases, you use it. Fair enough. But as much as you can't, stay away. Okay? So that's important. You have to know that. Okay? Okay. So now, again, so the evidence part now, this is again simple. We have to utilize this big message that we understood here and in all these other places to write these answers. We're going to utilize in the 12 marker. So when you say it agrees, why? It's because the big message of source A is blah 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 blah. Evidence for this, add a few quotations. Okay, boom. That's the thing. Link it back. Link it back. Okay? Quotations, it's a sort of a formula, but it's not in the formula for paper 1 and paper 4 that we know. Okay? You got to link it back after giving those quotations. Now you've done all this. Let's assume you've done all this for the 12 marker brilliantly. You have to write all the sources, right? And so you've got those many sources I didn't previously. Source A to I maximum, right? And now you have to write paragraph in each and every single one plus intro plus conclusion, right? So now you've done all this. You've put quotations, you've put evidences, done everything you have, but you still only get 10 out of 12. Why? No. It's not the answer. The answer is you have to evaluate 2 sources. Now what's evaluation against provenance? Provenance is gold because these 2 bonus marks in the marks made explicitly says 2 bonus marks for evaluating 2 sources. So out of all these, you should pick 2 sources. Now how do you pick those 2 sources? I always pick the ones which are the least reliable because they're easy, right? So for example, if it's from a Russian newspaper, it's propaganda. So you write a couple lines. You're like, oh yeah, it's also important to note that this is an unreliable source, highly unreliable because this comes from Russian newspaper, so it's probably used for propaganda for the children, for the people, right? You shift the blame from the Russian government. That's evaluation. Do that for another source. And I would suggest, however, do this evaluation for sources on opposite sides. It gives it better. Okay? So what else do we have left? But you were right in one thing. If they want to get those first 10, but like you got these 2 bonus marks, you got 11 now. That's where you have to give the final verdict. Verdict is needed. Verdict matlab what? Meaning what? Meaning, what's the evaluation? What's the end answer? Do all these sources combined? Which side do they support? Right? So now there are a couple of things to note, right? So in some of these questions, some of them, you see and explain using your background knowledge. Now it's very good, you have to look out for this. This is very, very key. Because that means in the highest level answers, they will expect some part of your background knowledge to be used. Very minute, but it will be there. Okay, explain the background knowledge. And this is only the second part of the question. So they'll say, oh, how far, okay, so how does this make that surprising? Explain with your background knowledge. No, but the most useful background knowledge is why now. So why does this person give this speech at this point in time? Explain using your background knowledge. So this is where the context applies with the background knowledge, right? And if you notice at the start of before they give all the questions, they say answer questions blah 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 blah, and you can cross-reference your answers. Have I ever cross-referenced? Have I seen any of my brothers or Priyanka's answers that have been cross-referenced? No. I don't suggest it. Don't recommend it. Never tried. Never been tried by any of the people who've talked. Don't do it. Right? Okay. And if I could have, I would have gone through some sources with you guys. But that's it. End of the lecture.
That's all. Yeah, of course.
Oh, a long one. That we're talking about, right? How do you get them? The skill, okay? I'm right at the top here. I'm asking based on what it is. So skill, you go through papers. You don't write out full answers. You just look to analyze. You go through the questions and you look and you see. You analyze. You just annotate. Analyze and annotate. That's it. That's all you have to do. Nothing. Just analyze and annotate what you have to do. Okay, that's basically it. Okay.